We all have dreams. We all have goals and aspirations. Things we strive for. Things we hope for. We want the best, and we want the greatest, and we want it now. But we've got to do the work. The pain, the struggle, the sweat, the tears, the time, the commitment, day in and day out, over and over and over again. The failures, the loss, fighting the voice inside that's telling you it's just not worth it. Saying yes when everything in your being is saying no. Success doesn't just happen. Satisfaction doesn't just happen. It's not gonna come to you. You've got to earn it. Take it. Go get it. You've got to do the work.
Hey, well, we're in the third week of Do the Work, and basically what we're doing is we're looking at what it takes to do things that are remarkable. And so when we talk about remarkable, we could mean, kind of on a small scale, large scale, it doesn't matter. Everybody's got a different idea of what remarkable means. You could say to yourself, boy, I want to be a remarkable dad. I want to be the dad I never had. Or you want to be a remarkable teacher. You want to reach the next generation, really make an impact. Or maybe you're still in school and you're thinking, I want to develop vaccines that save people's lives. Or I want to make the world a safer place, a less violent culture. Whatever it is, all of us have deep within us, whether it's large or small. We all want to do something that's remarkable. We all want to do something that's ambitious, different, unique. And I think for most of us, when we think of the word remarkable, we think of, boy, we got to have these dramatic strides or huge breakthroughs. It's just something that's going to be bold and daring and different. And I think what we're talking about in this series is actually not. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the everyday decisions to move in the right direction over an extended period of time. The whole idea of consistency and being mundane work that amounts over time in the right direction to something remarkable. And so what helps wrap my head around it is about 20 years ago, there's a bunch of guys got together and they said, hey, let's make the world's tallest building. And so they drew up these plans. They came up with these amazing ideas with architecture and engineering. This thing would rise a half a mile into the sky. It's what we know as the Burj Khalifa, which is in Dubai right now. So all of this stuff, it's remarkable. It's crazy. It's like off the chart. But it doesn't get by the fact that there was 5 years. It took 5 years to build it. 5 years of people showing up every day to lay concrete, to tighten bolts, to place glass and steel in place. That's what we mean by doing the work. It is the achievement of something that's remarkable from everyday, consistent, mundane efforts. And so this week, what we want to do is we want to take a quick detour and say, you can't do remarkable alone. It's not a solo activity. It's not something that just happens on its own. Remarkable things happen when we have remarkable people in our lives. To do remarkable work, you have to surround yourself with remarkable people. And here's the problem. The problem is that in our lives, we are designed culturally to become islands. Seriously, we lose friends as we get older. When you get in your 20s, 30s, 40s, you keep paring down in smaller and smaller groups. Just a fact, okay? So if you're in high school, okay, as a high schooler, if you're sitting on one of our campuses, you're in 10th or 11th grade, I feel you, I know what you're talking about, I know what you're feeling. You'll have the most friends you will ever have in your life right now. I remember being in 11th grade sitting in a church all by myself, just wondering who my friends were, and that's kind of like the big task of high school is figuring out who's phony and who's for real and all that kind of stuff. But listen, good news or bad news, depending on how you view it, this right now in high school, these are the most friends you'll ever have in your life because you'll get into your young 20s, right? You'll get into your young adult years, and that group will start to pare down a little bit. Part of that's from design, because when you get into your young 20s, you're a little bit more sure of yourself. People are a little bit more sure of who they are, and you kind of naturally select smaller groups of people. But here's the thing. You get into that like 20, 21, 22-year-old phase, and people start dropping off, getting married. That's spooky, right? Because a bunch of y'all, hey, we're going to go out and get wings. You want to come? No, I got to get home to the husband. Got to get, it's like family time. You're like, what? So it starts to pare down just a little bit, and if it's not marriage, it's career. Because I've seen this. I work with young adults, okay? So I've seen this over and over again. Hey, we're going to do like karaoke. It's going to be a lot of fun. You come? No, I got to get up at 5 a.m. Since when did 22-year-olds become so old? You see people just drop off and your friendship circles get a little bit smaller. And so you go from there to having kids, okay? So you get married, you cross that line, you think this is really great, and then it's married with kids. You start seeing people pop up with kids, and it's like it infects people. Like once one person gets it, and another person gets kids, and they have kids. I remember my wife and I, when we were newly married, and maybe we were like a year or two married, and we went over to a friend of ours, Don and Kelly Crane. They had some kids. They had like 3 kids. I couldn't count them. They were just everywhere. Okay, so we're sitting down. We're at dinner, and I'm trying to tell a story, and it's like, Mommy, I have a question. Mommy, this hurts. Mommy, and it's just like all this stuff. I felt like I was in a zoo. I felt like I was in a zoo crammed into a bus, okay, and going off a cliff all at the same time. So there I am, and I'm trying to tell a story, and Mommy, I got a question. Mommy, and I'd stop. And Kelly would look at me like, John, keep talking. I can handle 2 or 3 conversations at once. But I can't. I can't, because I'm a male. Men don't do this. And so I went home and I was like, yeah, I think we're good for a while. What do you think? Let's just kind of get to know each other a little bit more. And the ironic thing is we have 3 kids. So what happens though from there, so you have you're young married with kids, and then the kids become your life, It's like you've got, listen, you got 4 and 5-year-old kids, they've got 2 and 3-year-old kids, but you can't play together because play dates, they don't match up. You know what I mean? Or like I discipline my kids, and like they don't discipline their kids. They're a bunch of monsters. They go around, they put stuff on the wall, they kick people over, all that kind of stuff. We're not hanging out anymore. So again, you start to see your kids become your life, and then you're driving them everywhere. You drive them everywhere. And so like all the shortcuts everywhere, but you really have no life. And then you turn it into, you don't have a life, because now you're working 3 or 4 jobs because you got to pay for college. And then you're all visiting college, and then they leave. So you're an empty nest. And no one wants to see you anymore because you're weird. Because it took 18 years, and now you have PTSD, and you don't know how to get rid of it. And the only person you can relate to is your wife. And so you wind up retired, and pretty much, as a retired person, you wind up on the couch with a scowl on your face, and you're watching Wheel of Fortune. That's you. And if it's not this, it looks like this, okay? You got a furry animal on you're just watching Wheel of Fortune all the time. That's all you're doing. Reruns. You can even guess the things over and over again. Oh, I've seen this before. When you elbow someone next to you, you've watched too much Wheel of Fortune. Please don't get upset at me, because I actually like Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. They come on together, 7 o'clock. Don't miss it. So, listen. There is a problem in all of this, though. You see how it starts out big and it keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and pretty soon you have no friends left. And this is the thing we've got to do the work on. What we want to look at today are what are some traits of some core friends that we can have, because we don't have a core anymore. We don't have the core friends that call us up. So what do we need to do to get core friends back in that challenge us to greatness? Because you can't do remarkable things unless there are remarkable people in your life. And basically what's happening to us is that we're losing vital relationships. You might say, I'm 25 years old, I got lots of relationships. It's happening. Trust me, okay? In the next 5 years, you will see that a part of you has started to die because you're not keeping vital friends in there, remarkable people. And you know what? We stop growing. We really do. We stop growing when we lose touch with remarkable friends. And that's sad. And that's why today we've got to buck this trend. We've got to do the work. This is where the work happens. And I want to stop here, and I want to share with you some examples from the Bible of remarkable friendships to give us an idea. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of these remarkable friends. But the real work comes in saying, okay, so how do those people match the people in my life? And how can I start choosing people from my core to start building up from the inside out so I don't die on the inside? So we want to hear traits of the kind of people we need in our life, and then we need to go do the work of making sure they're in our lives. And I know, there are plenty of people out here saying, look, I'm 28 years old. Hey, I'm 42 years old. Hey, I'm 62 years old. I don't need to hear a lesson on friendships. Yeah, you do. All of us do. Because when I'm talking about friends, I'm not talking about the buddies that you get drunk with on the weekend. I'm not talking about the people you get together with and you gossip about people with. I'm not talking about acquaintances. I'm not talking about the people that you type happy birthday to once a year and you count them as friends, but they're just digital and they don't really intersect with your life. I'm not talking about someone from your community. I'm talking about people that make up your core. They provide influence, and you've personally invited them in to provide influence into your life. So I want to introduce you to three remarkable people in the life of David. We're going to be looking at grab your Bibles next to you, in front of you, wherever they are, whatever campus you're on. Grab some Bibles or open up your phones, get to your Bible app. We're going to be opening up to page 225. It's 1 Samuel chapter 18. And we're going to look at the life of David a little bit here, because David, when he's younger, he follows this pattern of when he's younger, he's got a lot of people speaking into his life. And as he gets older, they disappear. And he starts making horrible choices, and he has no core left. So before we turn there, I know you're turned there, but before we start reading from it, I want to just give you a little intro on the whole thing. First of all, we're going to be hearing about the story of David. Now, we're reading from the Bible, but we're reading from a guy and a guy's life 3,000 years ago. That's not a story. It's not legend. It's not folklore. It's not a wives' tale. It's not something that, somebody whispered down the lane and got bigger and bigger and bigger. This is a historical figure. How do I know this? Because if I got on a plane right now and I went to Tel Aviv, Israel, I can look at a stone chunk and it talks about David, the house of David. This is a person from history. It's not a story. People didn't make this up. This is a historical figure. Not only that, but I know this is faithfully preserved for me over thousands of years because this isn't propaganda. This isn't like David was amazing. He just did all these amazing things constantly, and he was just an amazing guy. No, it's got warts in it. It's got the stuff that he did that was horrible. David was a guy who loved God and made major mistakes. Does it sound familiar? That's why we read him, because he had a passion to follow God. And even if you're not sure where your passion is, whether you want to follow God or not, we got to listen to this guy because he wanted to follow God. But then there were times where he made major mistakes, so we can learn from his good and his bad. And so that's why we read it. And his story starts off so interesting. He's 15 years old. He lives in this place called Bethlehem. Bethlehem is this small little town outside of Jerusalem. When you hear Jerusalem, think Washington, D.C. It's where all the power brokers are, okay? Jerusalem's this big, huge city where you got a king named Saul and his son named Jonathan. Remember those names, King Saul and his son Jonathan. About a mile outside of the city, there's this little stopover town called Bethlehem, and that's where David lives. He's insignificant. There's nothing special about him. He's 15 years old. He's a shepherd, okay? In that culture, shepherds were no big deal. So in the middle of that, you got this religious guy, Samuel. He's a prophet. He hears from God, and he tells people about it. And he also anoints kings. To anoint somebody is to say, hey, you're set aside as special. God is going to make you the next king. Samuel walks up to David's house one day and says, hey, you're the next king. Which is creepy, okay? Can you imagine some old guy with a flask of oil saying, gonna make you king? Maybe not. So, there's kind of an interesting process. He shows up. He says to this 15-year-old, hey, you're the next king. They all say, you sure? This guy? Yeah, this guy. So he gets introduced to Saul, who's the current king. And what do you know about kings with future kings? They want to take care of them, This is where the whole thing gets a little shady. Saul can't stand that there's another king out there, and he's like, well, maybe I'll just give him some assignments. So he starts giving him these assignments in the military, hoping that he'll get killed. But David's amazing. Apparently, he's a really good warrior. So he does all these assignments and doesn't get killed. So Saul gets really jealous. And you'd think that Saul's son, Jonathan, he's the crown prince. He's the next in line. He's the one who wants to take care of David more than anything. Get rid of him. Just completely off him and say, I'm the next king. But we read about a remarkable person named Jonathan in chapter 18, verse 1. After David had finished talking with Saul, he met Jonathan, the king's son. There was an immediate bond between them, for Jonathan loved David. Okay, stop here. Notice it doesn't say David sucked up to Jonathan, or David tried to score brownie points, or he was a brown nose, or that should have been the way it is. David's nothing. He has not a lot of money. He's just a little shepherd boy, and he shows up in Jerusalem. He meets the king, and he meets the son, but it's Jonathan who loved him. This is kind of a remarkable thing, what's happening right now. Verse 2, from that day on, Saul kept David with him and wouldn't let him return home. Of course, because you keep your enemies closer, right? He's going to find some way to kill him. Verse 3, and Jonathan made a solemn pact with David because he loved him as he loved himself. Jonathan sealed the pact by taking off his robe. Taking off your robe and giving it to somebody is like saying you're now royal. And giving it to David together with his tunic, his sword, his bow, and his belt. And what this is telling me is that, look, David didn't have a whole lot going into this. Jonathan gave him everything. That's a remarkable friend. Remember, what we're doing is we're just looking at some of these instances in David's life of remarkable friends. And then at the end, we're going to say, who fits this bill? So start thinking, like, who is this, like, in my life? Because Jonathan is extraordinary. Because not just does he give him stuff, flip over a page to chapter 19. We'll keep following this story in bits and pieces. Chapter 19, verse 1. Not only does he give him stuff, but he saves his life over and over and over again. Saul now urged his servants and his son Jonathan to assassinate David. So Saul is just out with it now. He's like, okay, look, we're going to kill David. Everybody cool with that? Yeah, sure. Okay, let's do it. Verse 2. I'm sorry, not verse 2. But Jonathan, because of his strong affection for David, told him what his father was planning. And he goes on to reveal what his plans are. Jonathan, over and over again, saves David's life. He initiates. He looks for ways to be a remarkable friend. Look in chapter 20, verse 3. In 20, verse 3, David is exasperated. David took an oath before Jonathan and said, your father knows perfectly well about our friendship. So he has said to himself, I won't tell Jonathan. Why should I hurt him? But I swear to you that I am only a step away from death. I swear it by the Lord and by your own soul. And then what does Jonathan say? He says, tell me what I can do to help you. He doesn't just throw up his hands and say, what can I do? You know, he's my dad, he's the king, he's probably going to get what he wants. He's like, no, what can I do? How can I help you? I'll do anything I can to help you. I think sometimes we lose sight of what real friends are because we get used to junk friends. And maybe they're remarkable people in our lives, but they're not the kind of friends that we really need at our core. We need friends that actually want to be our friends. You ever have those friends where you kind of like, you call them, you text them, you set up stuff, you say, hey, let's do this. Yeah, we do stuff together. We kind of have fun together, but then like we go back to the norm where we don't ever really talk to each other. And you think to yourself, if I never called this person, would we ever do stuff together? You know that feeling? I could see it on some of your faces. That feeling of, yeah, you know, I feel like I'm the only one keeping this thing going. If I didn't initiate, we would never talk. That's not Jonathan. Jonathan sees friendship as a two-way street. That is the bar for friendships. It's a two-way street. A remarkable friend is someone who continues to call you, who continues to text, who continues to set up stuff. And I think we settle for second best because we have this weird idea of what friendship is. When you're talking about doing the work of putting remarkable people in your life and saying, I want this person in my life, may you think of Jonathan. Jonathan was the guy who said, hey, look, I'm there for you. You don't have to wonder whether I'm in this because I'm in this 100%. Set the bar high for friendships like Jonathan. So we fast forward. We're going to go ahead in time a little bit. And we're going to fast forward to now David is running for his life from Saul. It's a common thing. Everybody knows that David's being hunted down by Saul. And so this is where it gets interesting. We're going to flip to chapter 25. Chapter 25 is on page 230. And I don't know, it's just the way this takes place is very interesting. So David is running for his life from Saul. David has about 400 guys with him that are all loyal to him. And they're like, yeah, you know, we believe in you. Let's keep going. We heard that, you know, you've been anointed. You're going to be king. We support you. We're loyal. And so he moves around from place to place. And it's so hard to explain because in this particular place that he's staying right now, he sets himself up as kind of like a mafia guy, okay? I'm sorry, but it's true. So he's in this area, and he protects all the shepherds and all the people, the nomads in this place. He protects them from like wild creatures and stuff like that, but he also protects them from like robbers and thieves and stuff like that. And in exchange for his protection, see, I mean, it's like mafioso. So in exchange for his protection, he gets supplies and food and stuff like that. So the local people all give him stuff for protection. So that's kind of the way it is. So on one particular time, in these chapters that we're kind of rushing through here, David sends his men and says, hey, go to Nabal, and this guy's name is Nabal. We need some food and we need some provisions. So they go to the Nabal, and Nabal, his name means fool, gives you kind of an indication of what's about to happen. Nabal's drunk, and he's obnoxious, and he insults David, and he slanders his name publicly. So the guys go back and they're like, yeah, Nabal didn't give you anything. He's kind of ticked at you about something. So David goes, okay, so that's how it's going to be. Straps on a knife, says, come on, guys, let's go. 400 guys are riding across the desert ready to go kill him. I mean, it's totally something out of Sopranos. You know, and it's like, what? So we get that Nabal is kind of clueless, but he has this wife, and her name is Abigail. And so she's like, oh my gosh, I've got to stop this from happening. This is going to be horrible. So in chapter 25, verse 23, Abigail approaches David. In verse 23, it says, Abigail saw David. She quickly got off her donkey and bowed low before him. She fell at his feet and said, I accept all blame in this matter, my lord. Please listen to what I say. I know Nabal is a wicked and ill-tempered man. Please don't pay any attention to him. He is a fool, just as his name suggests. Sorry, I mean, it's his wife, right? I picture her from like North Jersey, you know? He's a fool, what do you expect? Sorry, I know it's totally not, but that's all I hear. I see with like big earrings and like crazy hair, like really puffed up. Like, I don't know what's the problem. I try to tell him over and over. But it just does. It's in my head. I don't know. So she's like, but I never even saw the man you sent here. I don't know what to do. So verse 30. Now this is where her accent changes in my mind. Okay, she's not North Jersey anymore. Verse 30. This is where she's she saves the day here. Leave it to women to save the day. I mean, David's doing this horrible thing. He's about to go kill him. And in verse 30, she approaches him. When the Lord has done all he promised and has made you leader of Israel, don't let this be a blemish on your record. Then your conscience won't have to bear the staggering burden of needless bloodshed and violence. And when the Lord has done these great things for you, please remember your servant. Listen to what she says, verse 30. When the Lord has done all he promised and made you a leader of Israel, don't let this be a blemish on your record. This is a remarkable woman. You know why she's remarkable? Because she doesn't know all the stuff that's going on behind the scenes, but somehow she has this almost prophetic insight as David is going to be king. And she says, hey, look, you're bigger than this. Hey, you have potential that's so much higher than what you're about to do. Live up to it. That's a remarkable friend. When you see Abigail, think of the people in your life that hold you to your potential, because a remarkable friend holds you to your potential. That's the kind of friend we need in our core. We need Abigail's. And so we need to fast forward again. We can't stay too long here. We're going to fast forward to 2 Samuel chapter 12. 2 Samuel chapter 12, you're going to find it on page 243. David has, we move forward in time, David has now become king. And we start to see some of these influences disappear in his life. Again, we see this kind of idea of narrowing fields of friendship. And he starts making some really poor decisions. One of the poorest decisions he's ever made was that he saw a woman, he really wanted to have this woman. He knew she was married to a Hittite, to somebody else. And he said, I don't care. He slept with her. She reported that she's now pregnant. And so he's like, I'll take care of it in some way. He tries to take care of it in a bunch of different ways. It doesn't happen. So finally, he arranges for Uriah, her husband, to be sent to the front lines of battle and killed, effectively murdering her husband. And there's no one in his life along that process to say, you sure this is a good idea? I don't think so. You're bigger than this. Until after the deed is done, Nathan enters the picture. Chapter 12, verses 1 through 7. Nathan tells him a story. And notice what the story is. The story is about a shepherd and sheep, because that's who David is. So he not only slaps him in the face, but he slaps him in his native tongue. Verse 1. So the Lord sent Nathan the prophet to tell David this story. There were two men in a certain town. One was rich, one was poor. The rich man owned a great many sheep and cattle. The poor man owned nothing but one little lamb he had bought. He raised that little lamb, and it grew up with his children. It ate from the man's own plate and drank from his cup. He cuddled it in his arms like a baby daughter. One day, a guest arrived at the home of the rich man, but instead of killing an animal from his own flock or herd, he took the poor man's lamb and killed it and prepared it for his guest. David was furious. As surely as the Lord lives, he vowed, any man who would do such a thing deserves to die. He must repay 4 lambs to the poor man for the one he stole for having no pity. And then David looks at him and says, you are the man. It's you, David. And he goes on to say, and why did you spit in God's face like this? Look at all he's given you. And you disobey God and do this horrible thing? God's had it with you. And this is what's going to happen as a result. We need Nathans, because a remarkable friend cares enough to confront. We need people in our lives that speak up and say, hey, what you did there was wrong. And you know what? It can't be our wife. It can't be our husband. It's got to be someone in our lives that speaks into our life that says, hey, what you did was wrong. And I'm not going to let you continue on in this path because you're too good a friend to let this happen. A lot of times we have people in our lives that are kind of like, oh, I can't say anything, because, hey, it's his choice. I don't want to judge. No, we need people in our lives to call what we did out. And as David got older, these influences got lost. And he becomes more and more isolated. And maybe that's the whole idea of becoming a king, is that as a king, nobody wants to tell the king he's wrong, or nobody wants to hold the king to their potential. And what happens is he starts making a lot of really poor choices, and he becomes more and more alienated. In fact, one of his sons rebels against him and goes to war with him to try to take over the throne. Another son, through deceit, tries to become the next king, the next in line. And we see at the end of his life, there's no line of succession. Usually kings met together with their kids and said, look, you're going to be the next. But there was no line of succession. Nobody knew what was going on. He was old. He was lying on a bed. There was no one around to even hold him. They had to hire somebody to keep him warm. That's how lonely he is at the end of his life. The only people coming in are people that want stuff. One of his wives comes in to him while he's on his deathbed. And you're waiting in this moment for her to say, it's Bathsheba, you're waiting for her to say like, honey, thank you for years of faithfulness. Thank you for the great times we had together. I had the time of my life. And I've never felt this way before. I swear it's the truth. You're waiting for something like that, right? But what does she say? If you look, you got to read 1st and 2nd Samuel sometime. You really got to read this. It's amazing what happens. She looks and she says, honey, you're going to make Solomon the next one, right? It's going to be the next king, right? We're going to say Solomon? Okay. That's the extent of the relationship he has with people at the end of his life. He's a lonely man, and it's a sad ending to a life that's dynamic. He's let the core go. There's no core left. It's all crowd. It's all community. Everybody thinks they know him. Everybody thinks they love him, but nobody knows who he is. And so David is a great example of what happens in life. He becomes unbalanced. He loses his core of friends. And he's just got all this crowd, this noise of people in his life that want something from him. And we suffer from the same condition. See, we need to do the work. We need to do the work of choosing core people that are going to influence us and hold us accountable to our potential. And then we need to feed those relationships. We need to open up to those relationships. We can't confuse the crowd with the core. See, a lot of us, it's kind of like this. I've been talking about the core, the crowd, the community. We all have a crowd of people in our lives. And this is a balanced image, but a lot of us are out of balance. We have people that we really don't know who they are. They're just people that we pass in life. Basically, we pass them on the way to work, pass them on the way into the office. We pass them as we're wending through the halls on our way to class. These people, they might be people that you just nod, hey, how's it going, something like that. But they're the people that show up on your Facebook feed that you're just like, oh, they're my friend. And you really haven't seen them in years. Do you know what I'm talking about? That's your crowd. And what's kind of weird is sometimes our crowd really crowds in and we give these people influence. The stuff they're posting on social media, you're like, oh, maybe I should listen to that. No, you shouldn't. No, you shouldn't. These people mean nothing. They really don't. Because then on the inside of that, you've got your community. These are people that you actually say hi to. Maybe it's like the barista, like, hey, how you doing? Oh, okay. And you really don't care how they're doing. It's just like a saying, acknowledge, hi, goodbye, that type of thing. And, it's like the cashier at Sheetz or Wawa or whatever it is. It's the people that you just talk to. You're taking your trash out and you wave at the neighbor, that kind of stuff. Those are your community people. And again, we have these people in our lives that we really don't choose necessarily to be there, but they're there. They're team members. They're people on your executive team, whatever it is. They're people in your classroom, a study group. They're people that you might go out from time to time. Oh, they're there. Okay, I see them there. But you really don't know much about them. And again, we've got imbalances with these people because we give more credence to them because they might suffer from things or struggle with things that we struggle with. And we think, well, maybe we should listen to them because we have no core. And that's what we need. We need a solid core. What's different between the core and the community and the crowd is the core is who you intentionally invite into your life to influence you. Quality, remarkable people that you've done the work of saying, I want that person to influence me in my life. You don't want to listen to these people, and yet you do. You don't want to listen to these people, and yet we do. We let this influence us, this influence. We need to put these people in charge of influence in our lives. People who share our values. Maybe even people that are at a spot we're not at yet. Maybe you're thinking to yourself, I'm not sure what I believe yet. I think I want to investigate what it means to follow Jesus. You want to have people at your core who are following Jesus. You want to have people at your core who share your values and are a little bit beyond where you're at. You're not looking at your core. You're not putting people in there who struggle with what you struggle with. Don't put people in the core who struggle with what you struggle with. You want impressive people who call you up. Think Jonathan, think Abigail, think Nathan. People who hold you to your potential. And I don't know if you've ever heard this idea before of intentionally picking people that lead you. It's because for David, he started out here. He had lots of people in his life who could speak into his life, but by the end, it had disappeared almost. And you got all these people here who pretended like they knew him and loved him, and all these people here who are kind of crowding out that core. We shouldn't let that happen, and we can't let that happen. We have to do the work of choosing your core. And then once you choose them, you've got to feed that relationship. Core friends are rare and they need to be fed, and they're fed with consistent relationship. What does that look like? That looks like shooting them texts. It looks like keeping in contact with them. I'm not talking about long weeks away on hunting trips together. I'm not talking about let's go drink wine for a weekend somewhere. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about little bursts of saying, I want to stay in contact. I want to continue to run with you. I want to run faster as a result of our relationship. Maybe you're shooting verses to each other, Bible verses to each other, prayer requests to each other. You're saying, pray for me. I got this. I need this for it's going to go on, and I really need your prayer on this. Or maybe you're just grabbing coffee. You're getting families together. Maybe you meet up for 20 minutes before church, just to have that time together, or 20 minutes after church, or maybe it's 20 minutes before soccer practice. You're picking the kids up. You just got 20 minutes where the two of you can just kind of hang out and talk a little bit and share what you're struggling with. working on projects together. Ask them to join you in tasks. You got to fix the electric. Hey, can you come on over because I don't want to die, all right? I'm going to do this wrong and I need your help. That's where guys can really have some good quality time. And I know some of the ladies in here think to themselves, I can't possibly do that. I've got kids. How can I make time to do that? I feel guilty. Guilt. And women, come on now. You're better when you have just a little bit of time you can spend with impressive, remarkable ladies in your life who call you up when you're refreshed and energized and you can go back without losing your mind because your kids are scribbling on the wall. That's a better you. You deserve it, but you also want to provide that for your kids. So don't think of it like I'm robbing time from my kids. No, you're actually energizing yourself. You're building yourself. It's doing the work, and it's small, it's steady, and it's consistent. And finally, be open. See, David's life fell apart when he stopped getting input and he stopped divulging what was going on. Spiritual growth happens when we're vulnerable with remarkable friends. What I'm saying is this: you gotta open up. And don't open up to your crowd. Don't open up to your community. Don't open up to the people you work with that are just lost and don't know what the heck they're doing. Open up to people that are gonna call you up. Open up to people that are your Jonathans, your Abigails, your Nathans. I was in a group of guys once where we're all sharing about things we're struggling with, and it got pretty vulnerable. And as it's going around the circle, I was thinking, well, maybe I'm safe enough to share what I'm struggling with. And guy humor, you gotta understand guy humor. It's pretty rough at times, okay? So as it came around to me, I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll test the waters. So I was like, all right, guys, listen, I want to share stuff I'm struggling with, but nobody wants to hear a pastor struggling with stuff, right? And they're like, yeah, who wants to hear that? Oh. Yeah, right? And they're like, yeah, next. And they just moved on. And I was like, oh, okay. I'll just talk to the wall. So they totally moved on. And I was like, yeah, I guess I'll have nobody to talk to. So it kind of ended like that. And we're walking out to the car, and I'm thinking, that felt weird. There's this guy, Howie, kind of a muscle guy, he's big into Bowflex back then. He had hair that defied gravity, stood straight up, and he was kind of a harsher type of guy. He's a real snarky type of guy. And I'm walking out to my car, and he goes, hey, John. And I turn around, and he comes up to me, he puts his hand on my shoulder, and I can see his eyes start to well up with tears. And I'm thinking, oh no, what's wrong? And he goes, John, I want you to know that you can tell me anything. I want to hear what you want to share, and I want to hear what you're struggling with, because I care about you. And that's exactly what I needed to hear. There's two guys in a parking lot late at night hugging, which is a little weird. But as I just held him, I was like, I need this, God. We need that. We need that. And so we need to do the work. So I want to end a little bit differently today. I want you to take your phones out. Go ahead, take your phones out. Everybody, if you got a phone, take it out. Just hold on to it a second. We're going to pray with a phone in our hands. This is great. You've never done this before, I'm pretty sure. So everybody's like, put the phones away. Take your phones out. Just hold them out here real quick. And so, listen. We're praying with phones in our hands because as we're praying, I'm going to ask for God to speak to us individually. And you're going to answer with a phone. Now listen, some of you are like, I don't know what I believe yet. I'm not sure if I believe in God. That's okay. I don't care what you believe. I just want you to try something. It doesn't matter where you're at faith-wise. I just want you to try it because I think it'll work. And I want you to pray. We're going to give just some time for just you to have some quiet just to pray. As you pray, I want you to pray this. God, who in my life most resembles a Jonathan, an Abigail, and a Nathan? Who in my life is a core remarkable friend that I need to invite back in, that I've let the relationship lapse. I'm 62 years old. I haven't talked to them in years. I'm 29 years old. I'm just so consumed with kids right now. I haven't had time for them. I need to get them back in my life. I'm 19 years old, and I'm more consumed with all these other things that are going on, and I've forgotten to make room for quality, remarkable friendships in my life. So what I want you to do, I want you to say, God, who is it? And I believe God speaks. I believe he gives us nudges. He gives us pictures. He gives us thoughts, whatever it is. And the minute you get a thought in your head of that person, I want you to text them immediately. Don't wait for me. If you're like, okay, God, well, who's in my life that I need to reestablish contact with? If you feel like God is nudging you right here, right now, you won't be insulting anybody. Get on your phone, text them. Hey, can I talk to you later? Hey, I got to talk to you about something. Hey, can we meet up later? Take care of it. Do the work. Let's pray. God, we want to take a moment right now. We just want to completely surround ourselves with quiet. And we ask, Holy Spirit, God, please speak to us. Show us, nudge us, speak to us. Who is it in our lives right now that we need to invite back into the core? Show us, God, who in our lives is a Jonathan, an Abigail, and a Nathan, and give us the guts to text them right now. Father, thank you for these examples from your word. Thank you for examples from Scripture of remarkable friends. I pray, Father, that you help us to do the work. I pray, Lord, that you help us today and through this week to start building our core again. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, see, that was fun. You know, first time you prayed with a phone. This is great. I know that there's some of you out there that are more processors. You need time to think about this. Take the rest of today, just kind of have it go in the background of your mind. Maybe you need to text somebody later around dinner time, whatever, but build your core back up again. Do the work. And you know, some of us have even gotten to the point where we're like, we don't have anybody. There's nobody I can think of right now that's impressive that can call me up. Maybe right now is the moment as you're leaving to stop by the Next Steps booth and just say, look, I'd like to try a life group. I want to roll the dice, see if I can meet some people that will call me up. Maybe today's your day to do that. So I encourage you to do that. Either way, I'm going to pray that you have a great week, and that next week we're going to be continuing on in this, talking about stress fractures, things that are below the surface that if they go on unchecked are going to cause major damage to us long haul. So don't forget to come back next week to continue in this series. Have a great week. Thanks for coming. See you next weekend.